Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. It's a Q&A video today and just general questions just taken at random from my little stash. So thanks very much to everyone for sending them in. Hugely appreciated and very, very interesting. Keep them coming. So let's crack on, shall we? So the first one is from Joe Whitney. Thank you very much, Joe. And this one comes from the old-fashioned medium of email. Rather than the comments on these YouTube videos. And Joe says, hello Michael, first I'm a current subscriber to MCN. Thank you very much. We're roughly the same age, mid-30s, yeah. And so I still appreciate, and perhaps you do too, receiving a newspaper in the mail. I really enjoy your articles in MCN, as well as your YouTube channel and the road trips down memory lane, bike reviews, riding tips, etc. Thanks very much. Yeah, well, there's nothing quite like seeing everything curated together in one place with MCN, and I think, you know, it staggers me every single week that we manage to cram so much stuff into it, so much good stuff as well. But anyway, I don't digress. In all of your travels, attending launches in general riding, which probably amounts to thousands of miles, yeah, I was hoping you might share some tips on dealing with wind gusts. Recently, I was on a 150-mile day trip and had to endure almost constant 25 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts. I ride a Suzuki GSX-S 1000 GT with a taller aftermarket windscreen, and at times a wind gust from the back of the bike or underneath the bike and travelling forward or up, grabbing the screen and moving the handlebars left to right with force. This was really disconcerting. It felt like the front end would wash out. The gusts were intermittent, so it's hard to predict when the next one was coming. It was a white knuckle affair. Appreciate any advice you may have. Well, yeah, riding in the wind is tricky because you can't see the gust coming, can you? You've got to somehow predict what's going to go on. Yeah, we get caught out in the wind quite a lot. One of the worst times was a couple of years ago in winter. There was a massive storm, probably the worst one that we've had in the UK for a long, long time. And I made the very stupid decision of riding from Betsy Coed in Wales all the way into England and down southeast coast to Ramsgate in a day, when the storm was at its peak, when the news was saying don't go out, don't drive, whatever. So for the first couple of hours of my trip, it was the calm before the storm. There was no cars on the road. The roads in Wales I had all to myself. It was amazing. Then as I got onto the M6 in the UK and got to Rugby Services, it started getting really, really strong. And then down the M1, I had to do it in chunks because the wind was so heavy. I mean, I think it got up to 60, 70, 80 mile an hour at some point. When it was that high, I managed to get some shelter. It scared me on the motorway because the wind was leaning me right over. So for part of the M1, I decided to go country road, which was a massive mistake because I was going down fields, like exposed fields, and really getting blown about. There were trees everywhere. It was probably one of the most scariest things I've ever had on a bike. And, you know, I was nervous about some of the things I had to undertake on the trip. You know, I was worried about going over the Dartford Bridge, but luckily they diverted everyone through the tunnel. I was nervous about going over the Medway Bridge. It was weird. Got into London and it was like a ghost town in London. It was a surreal day, but managed to get away with it. So I suppose the only advice for riding in the heavy wind is A, not to do it if you don't really need to. Get yourself in a position on the road where you've got a bit of wiggle room if you get blown from side to side. So, you know, if generally the wind's coming at you from your right and pushing you to the left, you know, get into the centre of the road as much as you can. That will give you a little bit of room to move around and vice versa. You know, you're on a big heavy bike. It's unlikely the wind's just going to take the wheels from underneath you, even though it feels like it would. But my only advice is to get low on the bike. I was on a Triumph Tiger 660. So, you know, if I was riding upright like a sail, it was worse. So I was getting low on the bike and using your body to kind of counteract the wind, be really loose like you would do on a racetrack. So when the wind hits you, it's not pushing you and the bike together. It's kind of, you're dissipating the energy by being loose on the bike and let the bike move underneath you to a certain extent. But that aside, you know, there's not really that much you can do about it. And, you know, if you've got an adjustable screen, I'd keep everything low and just make you and the bike as small as possible so you're not catching the wind. But That's a really great question, isn't it? Because we all think about riding in the heavy rain and the cold and the sunshine and all the rest of it in extreme weathers, but the wind is probably one of the most dangerous, especially on a racetrack where you've got massive lean and then the wind can take the tyres from underneath you. But on the road, it's not probably such a big problem. But great question. Thank you very much for it. Next is from Ben Rideout. Hello, Ben. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that the Yamaha with its MT10 SP is the only Japanese manufacturer that's taken it to the Europeans in the super naked market. Can you see any of the others giving it a go, or will the super naked group test always be the Street Fighter Toyota V4, MT10 SP, Super Duke and M1000R? Cheers, Ben. Yeah, well, yes, it will, basically. The reason European super nakeds are so good is that they generally come on really good tyres. They've generally got really good brakes. They've generally got fantastic electronics. They've got really balanced suspension, lots of performance, interesting engines, and if you include the MT10 SP in this, you've got cross-plane crank engines in the super naked category. You've got V4s, you've got V-twins, you've got triples. And that's generally why they're so exciting. The Japanese, I can't ever see them really going that extra step. The development of Japanese bikes moves very, very slowly. Incremental changes, they're very safe, very conservative. So if you have a look at the current Japanese sports nakeds, you've got Honda with the CB1000R, Kawasaki don't do a Z1000 anymore, it's a Z900, so that doesn't really count. You've got Suzuki with the GSX-S 1000, and then the Yamaha, which is it gets into the super naked category. It just needs better brakes and better tyres, and then it would be right up there. But all the Japanese ABS, we've said this before, kind of robs the feel and power out of brakes, so they kind of just don't feel as exciting to ride. They generally come on original equipment, Bridgestones and Dunlops, which are fine, but they're not that extra step that you want from a proper performance bike. If you change the tyres on Japanese bikes, it improves them immensely. Generally their engines, although they're smooth and powerful, they're quite forgettable because they're just inline fours. And I can't really see that ever changing, really. The Japanese make some fantastic bikes, and if you own a CB1000 or a GSX-S 1000, then you're going to be more than happy with it. But when you're comparing them to the European bikes, they just kind of lack that little bit of character and lack that little bit of performance and that kind of specialness. So I think you're going to be seeing very similar super nakeds in the lineup of most group tests. What's the new one for 2024? Super Duke 1390 R and Evo. We tested that the other day. That's in MCNs very soon. We'll be doing a group test on that. A lot of the others haven't really changed, so it'd probably be a fight against the reigning champion. What's the reigning champion? It would probably be Tuono, wouldn't it? We'd have to see how the Super Duke stacks up against the Tuono, and the Tuono is, that's probably one of the best super nakeds. It's got character, it's got performance, it's got technology, it's got the looks. Yeah, so, but we want the Japanese to do well, don't we? I'd love to see like a really funky naked blade or proper gnarly naked R1 or naked ZX10 or naked GSX-R 1000, but they never quite go that extra mile. But that's a really good question. Thanks very much, Ben. Next is from Ross Mayer 4501. Hello, mate. And easy. Hope all is well. It is, thank you. Just a question regarding MCN's long-term bikes, and I thought I would just get your opinion on it. When everyone of MCN's employees gets a long-termer, how comes they never do a lot of miles? Every view I've watched or read. Do you feel the same way? Regarding your long-termer, do you have a tick sheet that you want to complete before it goes back? Well, interesting question. So MCN runs, like a lot of magazines do, long-term test fleets that the manufacturers provide us long-term test bikes. And the idea with these bikes is they're always new models, and it gives us the chance to really get under the skin of bikes that we've tested at launches and in group tests. And living with the bike's going to reveal a whole different load of stuff that having a day on a bike or a few weeks on a bike is going to highlight. So they're really useful. They're useful for testing tyres. When I have long termers, I make sure I go through as many tyres appropriate to that bike as possible, just to keep my tyre knowledge going. So that's interesting. You know, you get to test reliability, you get to test proper comfort, you get to test accessories, and get to do stuff with it and create content. So they're really useful. In terms of sort of the mileage people do, it kind of varies. You know, we've all got full-time jobs, we've all got lives, and as nice as it would be just to spend days and days on a long-term test bike, sometimes life gets in the way, and for some people they don't do as many miles as perhaps they would like. We would all like to just go to work and then just ride all day, but unfortunately it doesn't happen like that. So I would say that most MCNers do as many miles as they possibly can, and some actually do a lot of miles. Our editor Richard Newland could put Nick Sanders to challenge when it comes to mileage. Our office manager Alison Silcox does a lot of miles on her bike, and I do as well. I mean, I generally do. My long term of this year is the Kawasaki H2SX, and by the time I give it back, between the two, I've got one stolen, I would have done about 17,000 miles in a year, and that's just on that bike. That's not including all the other bikes I use. So, you know, I've done a lot of tyre testing on that and a lot of trips. And in terms of what I do with my long termers, I kind of think about what I want to do with a bike for a year. So I choose an appropriate bike. The last few years, I've been doing a lot of touring. So I've had a Tiger 1200 and an H2SX. And then you choose what you're going to do appropriate to that bike. So, you know, for those bikes, a lot of trips. In the past, I've had super nakeds and super bikes, so it's been a lot more sports based. So in terms of a tick sheet you want to do before you give it back, yeah, you've got a lot of ideas, and then a lot of ideas kind of present themselves as you're living with the bike as well. You know, if you have reliability problems or is particularly good at something, then you can create a long-term test report on that. So this year I'm not going to be getting a tourer bike. I'm going to be getting something a little bit more exciting, so stay tuned for that. But great question. We're very lucky to run long termers, but you know, they're very useful for, you know, for us to gain knowledge and to create content for MCN as well. So, you know, sometimes manufacturers probably regret giving us long termers because the bikes aren't as good as they perhaps could be. And you can see the reports every week in MCN, and we do roundup videos at the end of the year as well, which you may have seen. So yeah, they're a real useful asset. But great question. Thank you very much. The next one is from Al Hung 5637. I'd like to do my first track day, and my only bike is a 2020 Panigale V4R. I know it's not ideal for a beginner track rider, but it's what I've got. I watched MCN's first track day video and appreciate the tips found in there, but are there any additional words of wisdom you'd offer specifically for someone riding way too much bike, and possibly the V4R in particular? It's on its factory tyres and pads with good life left on both. A more sustainable bike is unfortunately out of the question for the time being. As others have said, your Q&A and memory lane videos are among the best and most impactful motorcycle content being put out today. Thank you very much. And one of the very few good things to have come out of the pandemic. Yes, so thank you, and keep them coming. Most very kind of you to say thank you. 2020 Panigale V4R, eh? I mean, that's probably the most extreme bike you could take on the track. And it's built for, it's a homologation special, built for professional riders to ride on the track. It's very fast, obviously. The brakes are incredible. It's very stiff, very hard to get the best from. But of course, you know, it's very capable. So to do your first track day on that isn't an issue at all. You know, the good thing about that bike is that you've got a lot of electronics, so you can set things like the anti-wheelie and the traction control very conservatively. So you're kind of bumping into those electronics quite soon to basically calm the whole bike down, make it docile, because with the electronics on quite strong on Panigales, the bikes are pussycats really. So that it's safe from that point of view. The ABS on a Panigale is really good, so that won't get in the way around the track. The factory tyres are fantastic. The Pirelli Supercorsa SPs are brilliant. You can just go with a track on that. The pads are fantastic. So it's a very capable bike that you can ride fast or slow. And it's going to flatter you in some respects as well, because it's going to be fast down the straights and it's going to be easy to turn. In terms of your enjoyment, I would say that you're not going to enjoy riding the Panigale V4R as much as you would do a slower bike, an easier bike to ride, a bike that's cheaper that you're not going to worry about crashing. I mean, you've only got to run into the gravel on that Panigale and, you know, scratch all the fairings and everything without even dropping it to do a lot of damage. So you say you're stuck with a V4R. I mean, crikey, I'd sell the V4R and maybe get a V4S and then buy a track bike with the change or something like that. You know, because if you're just going to use a V4R on the road, you're only going to use a few % of what it can do. And if you're not using all of it on the track, then you're perhaps not using the bike to its fullest. I mean, I know it's a lovely thing to look at and have, and to open your garage door in the morning and see a V4R. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. And the feel-good factor from that is probably enough. You know, who says that you've got to ride a bike to its limit? Because me included, we probably can't even ride, most of us, a middleweight sports bike to its limit. You know, we couldn't ride a GSX 8R to its limit, let alone a GSX 1000 or a Panigale. So, you know, it's not, you shouldn't buy the bike that matches your riding level. You want to buy a bike you want. But to do a track down a V4R, there's a lot of risk attached to it, isn't it? And I don't think you're going to enjoy it as much as you could. You know, it's like diving into the deep end of an Olympic swimming pool when you can just about swim. You'll be able to do it, you'll be able to splash around, but it's not going to be as enjoyable and rewarding or confidence inspiring as if you were in the shallow end and you knew you could put your foot down at any moment. So I don't know if that analogy works at all. But anyway, but if you're stuck with your V4R, then yeah, go for it, do some track days. Just be careful, just ride at your own pace and just build up and put those electronics on really intrusively, and you should be okay. But great question, and I'm very jealous of your motorcycle. Next one is from Rage Rider 6283. I think I've answered one of your questions before, haven't I? But thanks very much for sending in another one. Another great and interesting video as ever. If there was any bike from any era you could bring back into production, what would it be and why? I think everyone's going to know my answer, but before I give my real answer, I would say, I don't know. I'm thinking of Ducatis. Ducatis have become so expensive, staying on the Ducati theme, so complicated, so fast. You know, I like the idea. That original Multistrada, the one that looked like a two-wheel Fiat Multipla. You know, if they brought that back, it'd be pretty cool. Although I suppose you could say that the Multistrada V2 is similar to that. You know, I'd love to see like a lightweight sports bike in the same vein, the Ducati, as an 851. You know, Panigale is a thing of absolute wonderment, but it's just too serious, it's too complicated. So maybe some simple super bikes to come back, ones that are a little bit bigger, so they match normal people, normal 55-year-olds that can't bend their knees anymore or whatever. But in terms of the bike I'd bring back into production, it's easy. It's a GSX-R 750. You know, it's still great by today's standards. If Suzuki modernised it, it would be great if they, you know, if it had electronics on, which it doesn't really need, to be honest. I don't know. I don't actually know how they'd modernise it. There's nothing it needs. The only thing a GSX-R 750 needs is to be slightly shorter geared. It needs better brakes, which Suzuki would never do. If they put ABS on there, they'd make the brakes worse, like they do with all their bikes. It needs proper suspension, but Suzuki would never do that. Maybe electronic suspension, that might work. The GX, the GSX 1000 GX, the suspension is okay. But yeah, just bring that GSX-R 750 out. You know, dust it off. I know they sell it in other countries still, to America and Australia. Bring that to the UK, sell it cheap, and we can jazz it up with the change. And you know, although there's a GSX 8R now, Suzuki, which I haven't ridden, but I'm sure it's very good. but you know, it's 80 odd horsepower compared to a GSX-R, which was what, a real life 130 to 140 at the back wheel. You know, they're different animals. So I would love to see the GSX-R 750 come back. But great question. This one's from We Like GoPro Q&A. Which bike have you sold and regretted most? Or are they all on loan? I sold my 2011 Repsol Blade with 22,000 miles. It was immaculate and nothing had gone wrong on it in 10 years. Regretted it later. Yeah, great question. Thank you very much. What bike have I sold? Well, I suppose three come to mind. One bike I smashed to pieces. I didn't actually sell, but it was a 92 RGV 250N. And I ended up really hurting myself on that bike, but I wish I still had that bike. That was amazing. I had a 1996 Ducati 916 Biposto, which was the first bike I bought after smashing myself up on the RGV, which was 6 years later. I couldn't ride for 6 years because I was still too injured. But I bought that and it was amazing. It was just amazing to live with the Ducati 916. Just so visceral, raw. The engine, you know, the engine itself was loud. Euro 5 engines are quiet. That's not even considering the exhausts. But the whole thing just, it was just beautiful. And I basically had to sell that when I changed jobs, when I moved to MCN. So I really wish I still had that. And I really wish I still had my Yamaha T-Max. I sold it during lockdown with the intention of getting another one. And kind of life got in the way. I didn't need to commute as much as I did, and I never ended up replacing it. But I would still really, really like a T-Max. I absolutely love them. I just love how cool they are. Not in the UK, but you know, you go to Europe, they're just cool. They're fast, they're practical, and they're just so different from normal motorcycles, which I ride every single day. It's just nice to have something a little bit different. So yeah, give me a T-Max and I'll be happy. And a GSX-R and a 916 and an RGV 250. Brilliant question. What bikes have you regretted selling? That's more to the point. I bet there's been some big regrets, haven't they? But let me know. And finally, from A Man Astray. Hi Michael, love the insights, tips and reminiscing. Always value your opinion. Hey, your Tiger 1200 long-term review contributed to me purchasing the GT Explorer. By the way, I also own the Speed Triple 1050 RS for those memorable moments. Lucky man. Anyway, when you're not working, doing test rides, writing or recording these videos, I was wondering what you do for downtime. Do you still enjoy jumping on the latest long-term review bike and just riding around the block to the local cafe with mates? Or have you had enough of motorcycles and just sit in front of the TV and binge watch a series? Well, yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I'm very, very lucky. Me and other journalists and YouTubers, you know, or professional motorcycle riders, you know, when you get to ride motorcycles for work, for a living, and you get paid to ride a motorcycle, you just hit the jackpot. I'm so lucky. But unfortunately, it does spoil your hobby a little bit. So I'd never just go out for a ride for the sake of it, which is a shame. But I do still enjoy riding in my own time. So I enjoy doing track days, I enjoy racing, and I enjoy going on riding holidays with my friend and my girlfriends. So I still enjoy riding for the sake of it in that respect. But, you know, on a Sunday morning, if I've got a bike in the garage, I won't go out for a ride, which is a bit of a shame, I suppose. So instead, yeah, just sit in front of the TV, watch YouTube videos, watch bike YouTube videos. I've just started getting in. I'm really late to the party, actually. I think it's called RRC Restoration. This chap he's just a genius mechanic who restores bikes. And just the way he films it is very calm. There's no kind of flash photography or lighting or gimmicks or anything like that. It's just him with spanners. And I just watched his NC30 rebuild and his Ducati 748 rebuild, and it was amazing. But apart from that, I've got hobbies. I love drumming. I do drum lessons at Peterborough Music School. I've got a drum kit at home. I go running, I go cycling, I go to the gym, kind of normal stuff really. But yeah, I'm very, very lucky to be able to ride bikes for a living, and it's spoiled my hobby a little bit. So, you know, when this dream ends, I suppose I'll start appreciating riding bikes in my own time again. But it's not a bad problem to have, is it? But thank you very much for your question. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more videos like this coming soon.